$60 billion. That's the staggering debt hanging over. Financially, Boeing is grappling with significant instability, and the mounting losses from the Starliner program are exacerbating an already dire situation. So just how severe has Boeing's predicament become? Is there still any hope for the aerospace giant to reclaim its position and challenge SpaceX's dominance? Let's find out everything in today's episode. In the early 2010s, NASA found itself in a difficult position, completely dependent on Russia's Soyuz spacecraft to send American astronauts to the ISS. This was a direct consequence of the Space Shuttle program's retirement in 2011, which left the U.S. without the capability to launch humans into orbit. The situation grew even more strained as the cost per seat on the Soyuz soared from around $21 million in 2008 to a staggering $86 million by 2015. Recognizing the dangers of relying on a longtime geopolitical rival, the U.S. government decided to ignite its own internal space race. In 2014, NASA launched the Commercial Crew Program, selecting 2 companies to develop spacecraft capable of returning American astronauts to the ISS, Boeing and SpaceX. After nearly a decade of competition, the race has produced a clear loser, Boeing. When NASA launched the Commercial Crew Program in 2014, it secured a fixed-price contract worth $4.6 billion to develop its Starliner spacecraft. This was a massive investment from NASA, reflecting their confidence in Boeing's capabilities and long-standing experience in the field. On top of that, NASA realized there could be a potential gap in the ability to send American astronauts to the ISS. This gap arose between the time they stopped purchasing seats on Russia's Soyuz and the time U.S. commercial spacecraft were expected to be operational. Naturally, NASA took measures to push their contractors to accelerate progress. Specifically, NASA asked Boeing to be ready to conduct 2 flights per year instead of the one initially planned. Boeing quickly agreed to this request on the condition that NASA pay them an additional $287.2 million. This amount was outside of the original fixed-price contract, which meant Boeing received a significant additional payment without facing any financial risk if they failed to meet the requirement, bringing the total NASA had invested into Boeing close to $5 billion. Yes, NASA has paid Boeing a total of $5 billion amid budget cuts. However, $5 billion is insufficient for Boeing to produce a functioning spacecraft. As of Q2 2023, Boeing has reported a staggering $1.6 billion loss for the Starliner program, and that figure continues to climb. After the failure of its first crewed flight test, Boeing has been forced to pour more money into research, development, and maintaining personnel for the project. The delay of the next flight from February 2025 to August 2025 has only worsened the financial strain on the program. What's remarkable is that Boeing has had to cover all of these cost overruns from its own pocket. This is a direct result of the fixed-price contract structure NASA implemented for the Commercial Crew Program. The issue lies in how Boeing seems to have applied the mindset and management methods used in traditional cost-plus contracts to the Starliner project. In cost-plus contracts, the government usually compensates for any additional costs arising from poor management or unforeseen technical problems. Not only has Boeing poured billions of dollars into covering losses for the Starliner program, but they also had to rely on SpaceX to complete their mission. Specifically, Boeing had to call on SpaceX's Dragon capsule to bring 2 NASA astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, back to Earth. Since the Starliner CFT-1 mission profile includes returning the astronauts, Boeing will likely have to pay for 2 seats on Dragon just to fulfill their contractual obligation. This is truly an unprecedented situation in the history of aerospace, where a company has to pay its competitor to complete its own mission. Boeing's financial standing and reputation appear to be at an all-time low. Instead of generating profit, much of their resources are being funneled into covering the losses of failed projects. At this point, what's keeping Boeing afloat are largely its military contracts. Yes, the military pays generously. And NASA's Space Launch System, SLS program, a program that drains taxpayer money for Boeing's benefit. Currently, Boeing is seriously behind schedule with the Starliner project. The inability to achieve human-rated certification for at least another year could delay all 6 missions that NASA purchased from Boeing to transport astronauts to the International Space Station. This raises the very real possibility that Boeing won't be able to complete all missions before the ISS is retired in 2030. In this context, NASA will have to lean more heavily on SpaceX. In fact, due to Boeing's inefficiency, NASA has signed an additional contract with SpaceX for 5 more crewed missions worth $1.4 billion to ensure a continuous American presence in space. If Starliner continues to face delays, NASA may have to transfer some of the flights they purchased from Boeing over to SpaceX. Now, even though NASA and SpaceX might have experienced some friction in their partnership, NASA is keeping a close watch on SpaceX. After all, Elon Musk and his team hold all the keys to getting us to the ISS, the Moon, and even Mars. You may not know this, but NASA could have ended up losing many times the $5 billion, and it would have taken much longer before the United States had its own vehicle to reach the ISS. Why? NASA initially intended not to choose SpaceX. At the time NASA launched the Commercial Crew Program, they didn't have enough budget for both contractors. The difference in experience and reputation between the two companies was massive back then, leading many at NASA to believe that Boeing was the safest and most logical choice. And there were some fascinating developments behind the scenes. Recognizing its advantageous position, Boeing engaged in heavy lobbying, aiming to pressure NASA into selecting them as the sole contractor for the program. Their goal was to secure the program's entire budget, knowing that even if they failed or faced delays, NASA would have no choice but to support them. This is the classic case of privatizing profits and socializing losses. However, this move went against a core principle in the aerospace industry: redundancy. In a surprising last-minute decision, NASA chose both Boeing and SpaceX. SpaceX, the underdog, received a significantly smaller contract worth $2.6 billion, compared to Boeing's $4.6 billion. Throughout the parallel development of SpaceX's Dragon and Boeing's Starliner, there seemed to be a subtle bias in how NASA monitored these two projects. The space agency appeared to focus most of its oversight efforts on SpaceX, while taking a more hands-off approach with Boeing. As you know, if you're overseeing a project, you need to watch progress closely and be directly involved in product quality assessments. However, in Boeing's case, NASA seemed to loosen its grip. It's possible Boeing was granted the authority to conduct its own quality assurance and simply report the results back to NASA. How did NASA treat SpaceX at the same time? All NASA did was publicly humiliate them. Look, Jim Bridenstine outright mocked SpaceX for being irresponsible with taxpayer money. Well, the relationship between SpaceX and NASA became a bit strained at that point. Yet, as we've seen, SpaceX outpaced Boeing by 5 years with far less funding, and they even began conducting 2 flights per year without any additional payments beyond their original fixed-price contract. Pretty cool, right? So, is there still a chance for Boeing to reclaim its former glory? They are trying. When a company falls into decline, naturally, they restructure. Just this past August, Boeing appointed Kelly Ortberg as the new CEO. This is Boeing's hope for a revival. Ortberg is a talented and experienced engineer with an impressive track record of resurrecting near-dead companies as CEO. And this time, it looks like he's pouring his heart into reviving Boeing. That's why Elon Musk himself publicly praised him, saying, "The new Boeing CEO is spending time in the factories. That is the right thing to do." As the new leader, Ortberg is taking some incredibly aggressive steps, including firing Boeing's head of defense, space, and security, a groundbreaking move as the company fights to restore customer trust following the Starliner setbacks and a host of other challenges. Well, in the aerospace industry, the most successful CEOs often come from engineering backgrounds. So, while it's undeniable that Boeing is currently in no position to compete with SpaceX, this shakeup in leadership still gives them a chance. It might take years, or even decades, for Boeing to stand toe-to-toe and compete fairly with SpaceX, but I genuinely believe Ortberg is the guy to make it happen. All right, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth looks at the latest advancements in space technology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.